So good morning. Hope everyone slept well. Or if you didn't, I hope you made good use of the time. I'm going to talk a little bit this morning about, in this beautiful, sunshiny, wonderful morning, I'm going to talk a little bit about human misery. And the reason for that is that it's very clear to me in my own experience, in my own life, and in the experience that is reported to me by a lot of other people, and in just the general awareness of the human state, that human misery is universal. First of all, that no one is exempt from it, no one, and that one of its chief defining effects is the most powerful and effective and talented and nuanced movements of denial that we are capable of. We really don't want to admit to ourselves that misery is our lot. And part of the reason for that is maybe the whole business about calling it misery and suffering and other such dramatic and melodramatic terms. But we're stuck with that because that's, or at least in the spiritual realm, we're stuck with that because that's the way English translators translated words that are in Sanskrit or Pali or some other of the many Indian dialects that have, in which these ideas and these teachings have arisen. And the translators are not all that great. So I talk about human misery, but what I'm really talking about, I mean, we have bouts of really intense suffering and hopelessness and despair, mostly around the prevalence and what seems to be the intractable nature of the underlying discontent that is what flares up into episodes of melodramatic, self-obsessed love of this whole package of how wonderful I am because I am so tormented. But most of the time we deny it. That's our primary and number one strategy in dealing with the fact that human life seems unacceptable, unsatisfactory, not living up to its promise, not giving us what it seems like it ought to be able to give us, and not even letting us rest in freedom from the desire to get what it seems to be promising us, or at least to get rid of the idea that that things are bad. So denial is the first weapon that we choose when it comes to suffering, when it comes to the discontent that is the lot of human existence, human consciousness, the unsatisfactoriness of human life. In the time of the Buddha, this, of course, was enunciated, or actually probably enunciated sometime after the Buddha, but following the Buddha, this was enunciated as the first noble truth. Life is suffering, the first noble truth. And the reason it's designated the first noble truth is because it is the single most important insight for anyone who actually desires to be free of the idea that life sucks. The single most important insight that is of use to us is the insight that, yes, indeed, for all of my life, things have not been as I would like them to be. Sometimes this takes the form of very big melodramatic torment. Most of the time it's just an undercurrent of anxiety and watchfulness and carefulness and so forth. The word that's used in the First Noble Truth is not suffering, but dukkha. And dukkha is a Pali word which has been translated into English as suffering, but really refers to the kind of underlying discontent, the metaphor for which is a wheel that's on a cart that's slightly off center, so that the cart kind of, bounces along and isn't really a smooth ride. And that's the suffering that is the subject of the First Noble Truth. So it's useful, it's extremely useful, and it bypasses an awful lot of stupidity to actually be able for us to acknowledge directly to ourselves, directly, that our life is not what we want it to be. That we really have spent our life trying to find a way to make it what we want it to be, or to get rid of the things that are in the way of it being what we want to be, and so forth. And that we're tired of that. We're really tired of it. The form of this suffering, the form of this underlying discontent, is the endless watchfulness about the thoughts that come, the desires that come, the aversions that come, my role in the relationships with people, my role in the relationships with the world, whether I'm on track to get what I want or not on track to get what I want, this endless monitoring and commentary about what seems to be happening now. And above all, we remember. We remember, and we remember, and we remember. When we speak, expressing our experience of being miserable, we do so by reference to memory, reference to thoughts about how it felt or how it has been feeling. We have to constantly check on that to be sure that it's still there. And we, as life proceeds, we spend a lot of energy deliberately trying to remember how we are feeling in order that we can in the future refer back to it and confirm the fact that indeed we were miserable. So the remembering is a big part of the way in which we enact this discontent and this unsatisfactoriness. There are other tactics that we deploy also. We deploy the second most familiar tactic is the tactic of choosing to be distracted, of really wanting to pay attention to, anything, any thought, any plan, any sense, any relationship, any hope, any dream, any memory of despair, rather than attending to the reality that is present now, the reality of the experience of life that is present within us now. We much prefer to be distracted by sex, drugs, rock and roll, fame, money, fortune, misfortune, heroism, stories, TV, movies, poems, music, name it. We have an infinite range of distractions that we can call on to distract us from what's actually present now and what's actually occurring in the life now, and to distract us from our ever-present memory of the certainty that we're not happy here. We don't want to be not happy here, so we don't want to be reminded of that. So we look at other things besides that, in contradiction to our efforts all along to remember these things. So that's what we do. That's our lives consist in kind of a steady state of watching for something that might be more interesting than what's happening now, of remembering how miserable I have been and how miserable I will continue to be, and of doing anything to distract our attention from that. That's what we do. That's how we spend our lives, constantly commenting, constantly monitoring what's going on, what the thoughts are, what they mean, what they say about me. what they say about my hope. And anything that will keep our mind off of what seems to be the profound and fundamental failure of human life in its transience, its impermanence. We treat the spiritual teachings in the same way. We find in them hope and encouragement, and most of the time they are articulated in such a way and with such authenticity that they call to us to very much desire to be like that, to be like the spiritual teachings tell us we should be. The way the spiritual teachings tell us is the right way to be human. So that when we stumble upon, now most people, and I think this is true, most people settle for religion. The effort to try to take any kind of control over oneself, to take any kind of responsibility for the sense of the reality of my life, myself, is hard. And it is, for the most part, fruitless. It leads into the kind of thing that where we become, where we pretend. You know, I remember when I was involved in spiritual work in prison that there was a saying, fake it until you make it, within the spiritual community. Fake it until you make it. And actually that made perfect sense to me, because after all, what I'm trying to do is change my mind, change the way I think about things, change the way I look at things, change my relationship with myself and all others. So if I can find a way to rehearse and act as if that were the case, it actually makes perfect sense that that should produce some transformation in the way the mind looks at things. If we do it, try to act like that's the case, after a time, it should change us, should transform our minds, should transform the way we feel about thoughts and desires and all of that stuff. What it really does, of course, is produce another trance state, which is a favorite of ours, trances, the entrancement with hope, the entrancement with hopelessness, the entrancement with the possibility of spiritual enlightenment or spiritual awakening. It's one of the things we do, one of our strategies, one of the tactics that we employ to distract ourselves from the fact that we are not satisfied with our lives. And that's the way life goes. And for most people, as I say, they settle on religion, and it's perfectly understandable why that would be the case, since religion is easy. All you have to do in a religious setting is agree with the premises of the religion and try your best to be what you should be within the context of religion. And if you fail, that is no particular commentary on your essential worth, since, of course, we are all born afflicted with the sinful nature of humankind. However, that original sin concept presents itself. It's pretty universal in religious teachings. Even in Buddhism, which is a religion, and a religion which purports to be non-theistic. But the original sin in Buddhism, of course, is suffering itself, is the misery of human existence itself. So religion is easy, comparatively speaking. The fact that the vast majority of people in the world, I just read recently some statistics on this, and I don't remember exactly the numbers, but I can tell you it is the overwhelming majority of people in the world report themselves to be religious, of one kind or another, report themselves to be religious. And that itself is an indication of the universality of human misery. It's where we end up, hoping for redemption, hoping for salvation. That works okay. I mean, it gets people through the day and through the life, and on to the grave with something that can be referred to, and give comfort and solace and some pseudo understanding of their actual state. But that too is just the tactic that we have deployed to keep down what calls to be the vivid awareness of the fact that life is not what it should be. It doesn't satisfy. It has its moments, but they're in the minority. So it is extremely useful, this insight that human life presents itself as being unsatisfactory. It's extremely useful in being able to have a realistic viewpoint about your own life and about the nature of the unfolding of your life in time, as thoughts come and desires come and attractions come and distractions come and go. It's extremely useful to have that insight. That insight is available only by self-examination, by actually seeing, is this the case? Is it not the case that it's actually true that life, although I wouldn't give it up, I wouldn't trade it for some things maybe, like enlightenment or awakening, but I wouldn't give it up, although I wouldn't give it up, that life really, that a defining characteristic of being a human creature is that we are dissatisfied, that we're not comfortable with what's here, that there is a abiding certainty that is never examined, that the thoughts, the desires, the relationships, the traits, the behaviors, the memories, the expectations, and so forth fall short, aren't quite what is called for. And the engine of discontent continues. The feeling of another form of this misery is the feeling of alienation from our lives, the feeling that we are strangers, trapped in our lives, trapped in our minds, trapped by these thoughts, unable to escape from them, unable to make them go away, and the need to be ever vigilant, ever watchful, lest I make things worse by thinking the wrong thing, wanting the wrong thing, not wanting the wrong thing. This insight is extremely useful. It is almost critical that most people, by the time we come to the presentation of the idea of a spiritual solution, we generally come to it, or at least in my experience, and I've been told that this isn't uncommon, we come to it not as a result, not acknowledging that we embrace it because we are unsatisfied, dissatisfied, discontented with our lives, but we embrace it because we come to think that we are being offered something really extraordinarily wonderful, some new way to look at things, some new wiping the slate clean, making everything right. Not that we come to it because everything seems wrong, but we come to it because we are persuaded that we will get something really wonderful. Whether things are right or wrong, we will get something really wonderful, and this something really wonderful that we get is not primarily connected with the misery that has brought us there in the first place. It's something new, some new idea, some new possibility, a new adventure that might end in, divinity. Really. Buddhahood. Unlikely, but might. See, that's the advantage of religion. Everybody's going to die, so that everybody can expect that whatever is going to happen after death is going to happen to them. But when we fall into this spiritual arena, it's like in all likelihood, and this is like kind of a disclaimer, in all likelihood, it's not going to happen to us, but it might. And if it does, oh my God. So, although the Buddha and the early explorers in this realm saw very clearly that the whole purpose of spiritual practice and spiritual understanding and spiritual activity is to eliminate suffering, that's been left behind. That's gone. The purpose of spiritual practice and spiritual attainment is to get this, is to hit the jackpot, to actually win the lottery. And as a result of our efforts and our sincerity and our honesty and our authenticity, win the lottery. Get to be the Buddha. Get to be awake, different, changed. So it's not surprising that actually very few win the lottery. You know, I mean, we come at it trying to attain something rather than seeing that all that's promised in all of the spiritual teachings really is the losing of something. It's not the addition of anything, it's the subtraction of something. And the thing that is subtracted is different in different traditions and different ways of approaching it and so forth. But nevertheless, it's a subtraction. It's not an addition. And it's not surprising, therefore, that, like in the case of Buddhism, you know, when I first became in love with spiritual teachings, and which really took me by surprise, I had always been somewhat of a philosophical bent. I was interested in philosophy and all of that stuff, and I had some uneven, melodramatic involvement with the Christian religion over time. But when I happened upon the spiritual teachings, Buddhism in particular, my first contact with this whole realm was people who came in from Naropa in Boulder, which was Trungpa Rinpoche. I don't know if you know who Trungpa Rinpoche was, but he's a notorious and quite wonderful, now dead, Buddhist Rinpoche, Tibetan Buddhist Rinpoche. And I became quite friends with those people. It would seem to me when I happened upon it, like I wasn't miserable. I mean, it was the world that was wrong. It was the world that had me in the situation where that's one of our ways we go into denial. It's the world. It was the horrors of capitalism. It was the stupidity of human beings. It was the injustice of the American criminal justice system. It was all those things that were making me unhappy. If left to my own devices, if everything changed to be the way I wanted it to be, I would be perfectly happy. And didn't seem likely that it was going to. But when I walked first into these Buddhist teachings, and these men came and they would actually read the teachings. You know, like they would read stuff from Trungpa Rinpoche, the teachings. And as I heard them, they were like really very familiar to me. It was like I never knew how to say it, but that's exactly what I saw to be the case. And I was completely in love. I just fell completely head over heels in love with the Buddhist teachings. And I maintained friendship with those men. I, of course, kind of deviated from that into the more modern Advaita Vedanta realm that was brought in by Gangaji, and which was actually much more interesting than the Buddhist teachings because they really didn't require anything of me at all. Didn't require any practice, didn't require anything of me. And they were so wild, and she was so beautiful. And they in my what I will in my self-initiation into this world of Advaita Vedanta, I was rewarded with an incredible breaking open, like we talked with Julia last night. Incredible, unbelievable explosion of wonder and bliss and liberated consciousness and the unquestionable reality that all is one, that you are me and I am you and we are all together and cuckoo ka-choo. But I maintained friendship with the Buddhist people because they were really good people, and they were calm, and they were much different than the wildness that I had run into. And even after I got out of prison, I spent some time with one of them who was kind of the leader of that pack, and this was after the meltdown and the collapse of enlightenment and it's just a really torturous and boring story, but that finally in trying to understand what Ramana was saying, I stumbled upon the reality of my nature. And nothing much happened, but that I could tell. But over time I became less and less driven, less and less aware of the wrongness of things, the wrongness of thoughts, and so forth. But this is so subtle, it doesn't have the panache of the instant enlightenment and the breaking open and all of that stuff. It's just back where I started, only comfortable and happy here. So I was talking to this guy, Bill, and we had lunch together, and I had in my desperate attempt to find a solution to the misery of my life after the collapse of enlightenment, I had read, even during the enlightenment, I had read everything I could get my hands on that was of a spiritual nature. And one of the things that I got my hands on was Dzogchen teachings. Dzogchen is like the pinnacle of Buddhism. And they have always been very secret. They have been denied access to until recently, when the view of the Tibetan Buddhists is that we are in the Kali Yuga, and therefore it's important for them to get these teachings abroad so that they will survive the coming darkness. Really, So anyway, I came upon the Dzogchen teachings, and I discovered that within the Dzogchen teachings is the goal of them is the final step is the actual experience of the reality of your own nature. Now you get to the Dzogchen teachings, of course, after going through the whole Mahayana path and the evocation of compassion and all of that stuff, and then into the Vajrayana path, which requires the 108,000 prostrations and an enormous number of other very esoteric and difficult tasks to complete. And then finally you might fall into this Dzogchen realm, which is the final teaching, which is the pinnacle of Buddhism. And they say, in the end, they have a lot of other kind of weird things that they do, but in the end they say that the final teaching is you must have the direct, conscious experience of your own nature. So I said to Bill, Bill, they say this, so why do you guys go through all this craziness of ferry boats and stages of the path and prostrations and mantras and visualizations and all of that stuff that you go through, when at the end they just tell you to look at yourself? And he said, because of compassion. Because people are not ready for that. Because people cannot hear so simple a teaching over the din of their own misery and their own strategies and tactics deployed to deny their own misery. Mostly over that, the din of the strategies and tactics deployed to deny the misery of human existence. Don't want to look at that. So then I come full circle and I see the profound usefulness and beauty of the requirement that there be this insight into the fact that the reason I am here, the reason I am in spiritual work at all, the reason I am doing whatever I am doing, really, whatever I am doing, by doing I mean thinking about, worrying about, remembering, projecting and so forth. The reason I am doing whatever I am doing is because I am scared to death to look at the profound and fundamental reality that human life doesn't live up to its promise. That human life is a horror story. And that insight, if it comes to you, it doesn't require you to bemoan or worry about, because those are all tactics that we employ to distract ourselves from the reality of it. That insight, if it comes to you, simple and uncomplicated and unadorned with melodrama, that insight prepares you for the only thing that works. It prepares you to be able easily, now it doesn't take an expert. I mean, I'm the poster child for the fact that it doesn't take an expert on looking at yourself for it to work. But that insight will make it tremendously easier. Tremendously easier. So, my work then consists initially to present to people and to suggest to people that they're unhappy. Which, of course, is not the kind of uplifting and heartwarming and, we come together. I hear a lot of, I love to come to these events because I come to these events and there's this feeling of peace and warmth and comfort and being in company of like-minded people and all of that. And that certainly is true. It certainly is a characteristic when we come together like this. But that characteristic is not a feature. It's a bug. It's something more for us to be distracted from our own personal, individual experience of our lives. And of course, when I say our own personal, individual experience of our lives, that is way spiritually incorrect. But it is nevertheless the way in which we experience our lives. We do not experience our lives as being a part of the whole. We do not experience our lives as being a part of the human creature or part of infinite consciousness. We experience our lives as being personal and individual and local. And what I speak of, although I am not entirely as articulate and clear in the way I speak of it, what I speak of is the universal experience of human beings. It's the ground, the base state of human beings. From that base state of discontent, in that base state of discontent, we can move into much more melodramatic and extreme forms of misery and suffering in our attempts to do something about this underlying sense of discontent. We can move into extreme behaviors and traits and so forth of seeking solace and transformation and transcendence through addiction to various substances, addiction to various behaviors, various practices, various experience, and so forth. We can move into into states of depression and despondency, and just, like tired all the time and not really wanting to do anything. But those states themselves that come and go are all expressions of this underlying discontent as it is transformed by our efforts to do something about it. Leave it behind. Make it go away. And the fact is that there is nothing whatsoever, no sensational experience whatsoever, and everything that plagues us, everything whatsoever that plagues us is essentially at its core mere sensation. Everything. There are thoughts and commentaries that come and cluster around mere sensation, explaining it and so forth, but they too are mere sensation. And at the core of it all, at the heart of it all, is this underlying sense of anxiety and fearfulness. And that anxiety and fearfulness is not only the cause, it is the actual substance of our discontent. That sensation that we call by the name, we call it by many names, but which I call by the name of anxiety and fearfulness. Kind of an existential dread. And that too is mere sensation. But that is the cause. That is the substance. It is that must be subtracted if human life is to live up to its promise. It is that minor, niggling sense of discontent and watchfulness and paranoia and claustrophobia. It is that, and I call it by all those names because we call it by all those names. We don't need to call it by a name at all. It is useful to us to see its presence, but it's not necessary that we call it by any name at all. I call it fearfulness and anxiety and dread and so forth, but you don't have to buy into that. You don't have to acknowledge that that's what it is. What I urge you to do is to notice that it's here. This underlying discontent is here. And that's what needs to be subtracted. Now, we have come to believe over the millennia that what needs to be subtracted is ego. And by ego, what I take that to mean, since it's just a word that means I take that to mean me. That the most common opinion about what needs to be subtracted is me. But that can't be true. I can't be subtracted. I am here. Nothing can be done to change that. That is a misunderstanding. It's a misunderstanding that misunderstands the incredible gift of self-consciousness, self-awareness, to be the problem. It is like the ultimate seeing of what's happening to be the problem. And it leads us to a lot of craziness too. A lot of it. So I say that it is that dukkha, which is, in my view, fearfulness, whatever you call it by, is that underlying, unexamined, unarticulated, unnamed discontent that needs to go. And of course, to the extent that we deny its existence, to that extent it is much more tenacious and long-lived, which is why the insight into its presence is so critically important or useful. It's not necessary, and it's not sufficient to see that it's there, but it is extremely useful and cuts through an awful lot of craziness. That's what we're about, is to get rid of that. Now we have this power, which is quite incredible. We have this power, this rising urge to see things, to look at things. And that urge to see things, to look at things, to experience things, is itself driven by our efforts to get rid of what it is that, whatever it is we imagine to be producing this alien discontent. But it's an amazing power. And to me, it's almost, it's the power of speech. It's the power of naming. It's the power of discerning. It's the power of speech. Thought is speech. Movement is speech. It is the urge in human creatures to do something. And the only thing we can do is look. So we do that with great force and great energy. And we talk about it to ourselves. That's what the search consists in, is this simple primal power to look, to discern, to name, to define. That's what the search is. And the search is sometimes very big, like, oh my God, I got to get out. I'm going to die if I don't get rid of this. I'm going to die. And sometimes it's just kind of, well, things are okay, but boy, sure it'd be great if I was, I don't know, enlightened or high or something. And it is precisely that power to search, to look, to discern, that is driven by our desire to escape from the acknowledgement of the discontent and unsatisfactoriness of our lives. It is precisely that is actually our salvation, that power. It is the only thing we can do, is look. The only thing we can do. We can do nothing else. If you examine things, you will see that everything else just happens. Thoughts happen, movement happens, fingers go up, fingers go down. All this occurs. And of course I have a great desire to claim it all, but if I look at it with clear eyes, I see that there's no basis for me thinking that. This all just happens. The only thing we can do is look and discern and define. So this work that I speak of, this possibility that I would like to bring to the whole world, is to look in the right place. Instead of looking in thoughts, hopes, memories, expectations, projections to the future, instead of looking at whether I am smart enough or good looking enough or thin enough or not skinny enough or smart enough or rich enough or loved enough, instead of looking at all those outward things that we automatically and universally spend our time worrying about, we look instead to see if we cannot see directly our own nature, our actual nature. And of course, all these things that call our attention, these are not in any way, shape, or form our actual nature. They are expressions. They are a parade of phenomena that just rise, express, project. And we ought to know that by now because we have all been doing it for a very long time. Looking at these things, getting no satisfaction. Still holding on to the hope. We'll get hooked on spiritual aspiration and the possibility of spiritual attainment, and even after years of not much happening except, like disappointment and sometimes a little flare-up of wow, and then disappointment again. But it's really possible. It's really possible if once it is clear, even before it's clear, but easier once it is clear what the problem is. Not the name of it, not my name of it, but the actuality of its existence. Once it's clear what the problem is, then the direction of attention also becomes clarified. If the problem is my nature, which is what all of this says is the case, see this dread, this discontent and so forth, this isn't a thing that we don't see this as being like a misunderstanding or a mistake or a wrong turning. We see it as being our nature. See it as being our nature, which needs to be transformed, transcended. Something has to be done to it. And once we see that, yes, this is present, but it's not necessary, then the direction, the proper and effective direction of our attention can become very obvious. If this is my nature, if what the problem is that my nature is fragile and vulnerable and not very smart and afflicted by all of this stuff that happens, if this is my nature, then what I have to do, the only place that's fruitful to look, is at my nature, the actuality of my nature. Not for some magical outcome, but just to see, to look directly at me, not at self, not at awareness, not at the witness, not at any of those alienating ideas, but at me, the actual feeling of being me, prior to all the things that cluster around that feeling. And this is what Ramana spoke of when he asked us always, in the end, in all of his discussions with people, no matter how highfalutin they get, no matter how esoteric and ethereal they become, in the end it comes down to for whom is this problem? For whom is this solution? For whom is this confusion? Not how can I get rid of the problem? Not how can I get rid of the confusion? Not how can I hold on to this wondrous state? But for whom is this? The rest of it beside the point. And this is what I speak of when I speak of vichara. I speak of it as entering vichara. I don't speak of it as self-inquiry simply because that the term self-inquiry has been so it's lost its sharpness in overuse. We think we know what that means, but we don't. And this is what I speak of when finally, although anybody who knows me knows I can go on a lot, on and on and on. But this is why what I speak of finally, and any time I speak to people at all, is to say, just look at you. Don't worry about the rest of it. Don't concern yourself with whether this is smart or stupid, whether this is in keeping with this teaching or that teaching. Don't concern yourself with any of that. Don't concern yourself with what the outcome will be. Don't concern yourself with what you might possibly get from it or what you might possibly lose from it. Just really simply, in this moment, for just a fraction of a second, see if you cannot get the authentic feel of what it is to be you. Here is another name for you. And the fact is that if you will do this, it may seem like nothing happens. Actually, nothing does happen, really. So it may seem like nothing happens. There is no immediate gratification that comes from this practice, from this work. None. If there is an immediate gratification of any kind, it's just one more distraction that has been deployed to distract yourself from the continuing undercurrent of discontent. The work itself gives no gratification, none. It is so fleeting in duration that it may not even be noticed. It is you, and you are so ordinary, and so lacking in any interesting characteristics like noise and movement and flashing lights and so forth, and so always here that you are not the natural object of attention. The natural object of attention is things that are interesting and move and threaten or promise or, stuff like that. You are not the natural object of attention. You are the source of attention. You are the source of the searching energy. It is from you that it arises. It is from you that everything arises. It's natural for us, especially those of us who have long-standing involvement in spiritual work. It is natural for us to assume that spiritual work, and this is why I don't put this in the realm of spiritual work, it's natural to assume that spiritual work means to engage in something like this and extend the duration of your awareness of this. And it's not. And that's because we are so convinced that what's needed is to change our minds. Change our lives. And the idea of being able to rest in some silent, quiet, peaceful place permanently is appealing for that reason. But it has nothing to do with this. Really. It's all beside the point with this. The point with this is so simple. You just look, and you will get like that, a fleeting glimpse out of the corner of your eye, and you'll recognize it as you. And once that occurs, and it occurs as the result of your conscious moving of the search energy to the only thing that can do some good, then you'll come back, and back, and back. And over time, not instantly, not even quickly enough for you actually to take note of it. What you will take note of eventually is, wow, I haven't been miserable for quite a while. I mean, I've had some really horrible things happening, but they're just things happening. They are here. I don't bother to remember them. and then they are gone, and I don't bother to call them back. And then new things come. Just what life is. Endless arising of this magical mystery show of the parade of phenomena, which includes it all. But that'll happen before you know it, usually. Because nothing is added. Nothing is added. And the only things that continue to disappear, to appear and disappear, are the things that have been appearing and disappearing all along anyway. And the only thing that's missing is the discontent. The sense that there's something wrong with the way things are. There's something wrong with this life. Well, there's something wrong with me. That just goes away. And it's not even, its passing is not even a big thing. It's not something that, oh boy, finally, phew, finally made it. It's much more subtle, much more gentle than that. And what you will see eventually is that this magical mystery parade of phenomena is what you've always wanted. The ability to live as this creature, to live as the center of this parade of wildness and mystery and mystical, magical stuff. You know, good stuff, bad stuff, it's all a wild ride. But this is what you've always wanted. This is why you're here. You're not here to snuff out self-awareness. You're not here to snuff out, to choose and get rid of what you think is harming you and hold on to what you think is helping you. Nothing harms you. Nothing helps you. You're here to look. Nothing else. And there is, well, but you must do this for yourself. This is the other thing. And in the end, I have come to see exactly what is meant by self-realization. I used to think that self-realization was just about the coolest term I ever heard of. I didn't know what it meant. I thought it meant self-transcendence or self-transformation or the elimination of self or anything, but its obvious, ordinary meaning in the English language, which is the making real of self, the manifestation, the manifest expression of self, which self also being a word that's been washed of any usefulness by spiritual discourse, I prefer to say me, or I, or more often you. And that's what these lives are. These lives are precisely the manifest expression of the underlying reality of all, of you. But you have to look. And you have to do it for yourself. Nobody can transmit it to you. Nobody can put you in a trance state that is the result of this work. This work does not result in a trance state. Nobody can do this for you at all. I cannot even describe to you what your experience of entering into this work will feel like. I cannot even describe to you what your sense of the underlying discontent that I speak of actually is. Can't know anything about the particular way in which these particular arisings see things, understand things. And it's all beside the point. The point is you. There is no point to any of it but you. And you must see yourself for yourself. I can't even tell you what it feels like. Nobody can. But I can tell you that if you embark on this and you take it seriously and you do not just add it to be one more of the myriad things in your spiritual grab bag that you turn to from time to time to get encouragement or consolation or whatever, disappointment. If you don't just put it in the grab bag of all the solutions that you have tried, whether they be spiritual or religious or material or, I don't know, any other kind. If you just take it seriously, because we're talking about you, and you should take yourself seriously. If you just take it seriously and see if you cannot get this taste of your nature, your actual nature, this direct and immediate conscious taste of your nature, you cannot fail. Cannot. It won't look like what you imagine it to look like, but you cannot fail. Okay, I'm done. Anybody, we'll sit here for a while, and anybody want to talk, just, yes. That didn't take long. Hi, it's good to see you.
Hi. So I related more to what you were saying towards the end. Like, my experience isn't so much a constant sense of fear or a background sense of fear, but I do have that sense of not accepting myself and wanting to, and that being a fruitless struggle to try and accept myself or to try and change myself or.
That's an interpretation of the discontent. The interpretation of discontent is that you're not acceptable. That's how the box that you have put it into. And it makes it seemingly manageable. Because if it's the problem is that you're not acceptable, now you know what you have to work on. You have to become acceptable and so forth. But the source of it is the same. It's just your name for it. You follow that?
Yeah, the way I could, it's like I don't have time to sit and contemplate it or write about it to try and track it back to fear,
right.
but I can relate to it. Maybe it's the from struggling, like that power, the force of the search, like just looking for something to take away the suffering. I guess I can relate to the fear as the fear that the suffering will never go away.
Right. That's and it's like I said, I call it by that name. Mm-hmm. But the important thing, the insight that's important and importantly useful, is that there's discontent, that there's something wrong. That's the insight that I speak of. I call something wrong as fearfulness. You call it something else, and other people may call it something else entirely. It is nevertheless the universal experience of human beings that there's something wrong. And that's what drives the search.
And I guess what's nice about coming to a place like that or a conversation like this is that nobody else acts like they're discontented.
Isn't that true?
And so that's why it's hard not to just be suspicious of myself. Well, it's just me.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. But the thing is, and I understand that very well, I've often spoken about the fact that in my life, for all of my life, but more intensely the younger I was, but of course as we get older we get to be able to kind of manage things, right? But my life, all of my life, my sense was that everybody was real, except me. Which produced in me a tremendous responsibility to pretend that I was real too. And I just read somewhere else, I don't remember what it was, but in an entirely different context, somebody in a context that had nothing whatsoever to do with any spiritual or any kind of thing. Somebody speaking of the fact that for all of their life, they thought that everybody else had an identity and that they didn't, and that they needed to get one. So that too is seems to be pretty universal among us humans, is the feeling that it's just me. I mean, you guys are all got it together. You know, you get up, you do things, you work and everything, and it's just me.
Right.
Yeah.
And the thing that I would say that I feel like is a problem now is that I just don't have time to look at myself that much.
Doesn't take much time.
I know, but I only have the little, like, where I'm not busy in the morning, in the middle of the night, and at night. So it's like sometimes 3 times a day I look at myself and I'm like, well, okay, that's why it's still been a year and a half. I mean, it's just, wouldn't it help if I did it more, or? So?
I don't know. I don't know if you have anything to say about that. Mm-hmm. But again, this is really an amazing thing. And it's something I've seen a lot in the time I've been doing this work. People who I've seen for years, and I've seen you for years.
I know, but I never got what you you weren't saying this until, right. I didn't really hear it till you started having podcasts, and then I listened to it like 4 times in a row, and I'm like, oh, he's saying look at yourself. He's not saying, who are you? That's what you used to do, and that's why I stopped coming, because it really bugged me.
I was still trying to, look around this.
But so I consider it since a year ago, March. That's right. When I got what you were saying.
But that's not pertinent to what I'm going to say.
Okay.
I've known you for years, and I've known a lot of people for years. And I see you, and I see this amazing difference. You don't present yourself. Your face, your countenance, your demeanor has changed. You're more relaxed. You're less inward. And it's so obvious from here. And I know that it's not so obvious from there. And the reason it's not so obvious from there is because what's happening is not much. It's not like big things are happening and big things are changing. What's happening is a diminishment and a weakening of something that's there. And the natural course of events, as this misunderstanding begins to get resolved in the process of looking, the natural course of events is that the traits and the behaviors and the patterns of relationship and so forth that have been the case in the past, they just don't show up.
They actually seem to be getting worse.
Well, internally,
right.
But not externally. They just don't show up. Mm-hmm. It's not like, and we're not equipped to notice something's absence. Mm-hmm. Right? They just don't show up. Now, the internal torment and the internal confusion and all of that too will just depart. And you won't notice it when it goes. You only notice it when it's here. You don't notice it when it's not here. So what I'm saying is, keep it up. I don't think you could stop it now, but keep it up.
Yeah, but it hasn't. I just am feeling free to whine a little bit.
What?
To whine a little bit.
Whine's cool.
But it hasn't. Supposedly the one milestone is it becomes automatic. I wouldn't say that.
No, you don't say.
It's still an effort, or even when I make the effort to be like, I'll try and just be open and receptive, it's still an effort.
That's crazy talk. Don't waste your time trying to be open and receptive. Mm-hmm. Don't waste your time trying to stop being open and receptive either.
If I happen to be that way naturally.
Right, that's right. Don't waste your time with that. That's all trying to fix the symptoms. Mm-hmm. That's all that is. And the milestone is, and this is, I kind of regret having said this because it's not as straightforward as it seems when you first hear me say that. What happens is that you do actually return to it. what's automatic is the impulse to return to it, which comes in your mind as a determination or, like, well, I guess I got to do this and so forth. But that's just the commentary around it.
It's like, well, I guess I got to do this because this is the only thing that makes sense.
Yeah, and
It's
that's
not
just the commentary
like, oh,
around it.
good, or
Right.
it's not right.
That's just your explanation
Right.
for why. Oh, wait a minute, I should look at myself. Yeah, well, it's kind of a drag, but I guess I better do it anyway because I'm supposed to do it. But that's just commentary. The critical fact is that the need for that commentary arises because the impulse to do it arises. And all of that stuff is not a problem. Really. That's
I know that it just helps me to hear you say that. It keeps me
well, that's why I'm
going.
saying it.
Yeah.
That stuff's not a problem. That stuff will disappear. When its usefulness is completely destroyed, it just won't show up anymore. Won't.
Okay, and what about I'm just clearing away.
That's good.
What about like if you haven't forgiven everybody yet, then it's like then just
You better get busy. Go for it. And how do you
then
go?
you're too distracted. I could say it as
And
like
how do
then
you
I'm
do
too
that?
distracted resenting to be able to look at myself. That's how I can use it against me, what you're saying.
That's true. But but it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. And it's useful and acceptable, and I welcome the fact that you come up and report to me these things. And then I get to say, well, that's beside the point.
Mm-hmm.
But it is beside the point. These things are thoughts. That's all they are. They're habitual ways of positioning yourself in relation to something in order to protect yourself from the underlying stupidity of human life. They mean nothing.
Can you rephrase what you just said? They're habitual ways of protecting, of having thoughts in order to protect yourself from the fear, the underlying fear.
Here's the thing, right? This organism, this creature, this human being here, has over however many years it's been alive and operating as a human being. Certain things, the context in which certain things appear, produce tactics that are deployed to try to deny the fact that you are miserable and that there's no hope for your escape from that misery. These tactics are mechanical. They are like, and they're entirely the outcome of the relationship of cause and effect within the life, within the mind. And once they get in place, like the resentment and whatever it was that you were talking about before, once they get in place, when a new context and circumstance arises that seems to be the kind of circumstance and context that calls for it, these things just appear. Oh, that's that. That's resistance. That's the reason I'm having trouble with that. That's the reason that I'm not getting it. That's the reason, and so forth and so on. But they're just mechanical algorithms. They're like if this, then that, right? That no thought goes into, that there's no insight or discernment to it. It's just automatic. But they've developed over time. And since, like the first time they get deployed, it's just kind of, that's what I did. Oh, not that. The first time they get deployed, well, you live through it. All right? It's kind of like the underlying OCD stuff, right? Obsessive compulsive stuff. Right. Well, I'm okay when I do it. I don't know whether my doing it was the actual salvation or the cause of my okayness, but I know that if I do it, I'm okay. So, bam, here it comes again. Not out of any reasoned, thoughtful examination of things, but just because when this feeling is here, this strategy, this tactic gets deployed. Because when this feeling was here before, and I did this, I survived. I don't know whether doing this was the cause of it, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to touch each lamppost anyway. But these things are even more automatic than thinking it through or even saying that, just like any obsessive compulsive behavior is. That's all it is. Doesn't mean a thing. Can't hurt you.
So when you say maybe you didn't say it's the problem, but I guess what I hear is, well, the problem is, or the delay can be because you get distracted. I interpret that
that's not what
there
I'm
must
saying.
Be something to do to not be distracted.
There is nothing you can do to not be distracted except look at yourself whenever you can. That's all you can do. Everything that we've tried to do to try to rid ourselves of psychological disabilities like our being distracted or things, none of that stuff works. It's never worked. It can work in the short term. There are therapeutic exercises that can be deployed to make it work in the short term, but those therapeutic exercises are just a replacement for that about which we are dissatisfied. This behavior that we're dissatisfied, we replace with a therapeutic practice that makes it go away for a while. There's nothing you can do about it.
But
Except
even
change
simpler
time.
than that, like, okay, well, instead of reading a book, maybe you should sit and look at yourself or something like that.
If you think that and it causes you to look at yourself, it means nothing except the fact that the effectiveness of the looking is having its way. I mean, there's no discursive content to the looking, none. So all the discursive content around it, well, I think it would be better instead of reading for me to sit and look at myself. That's just an explanation being deployed to explain why you're putting down the book and looking at yourself
Right.
instead. It's the looking at yourself that causes that need to explain it to arise. It's not vice versa.
Right, more like, that's something I've, seen before in one of those experiences. Like, it just is all happening and I don't have a lot to do with it.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
It just doesn't feel like that anymore.
Doesn't feel like
It doesn't feel like it's all happening and I don't have anything to do with it anymore.
Yes, right. Well, that's a change.
No, I just
The
feel like a
looking.
normal
Oh, okay.
person now.
You mean it doesn't feel like the looking is just happening?
No, it doesn't feel like life is just happening and I
Uh-huh.
don't have anything to do with it. It's, I'm not in that
Oh,
experience
right. But
anymore.
it doesn't matter.
Right.
It really doesn't. The only thing that makes that happen, that produces the experience of what is really alienation from life. It's an alienation from your life. That's the cause and the substance of it, is the sense that life is dangerous and I have to keep it at arm's length. And life, I have nothing to say about what happens in life. But there's no way that you can rid yourself of that. There's no way that you can take away the alienation from your life other than to subtract from it the cause of that alienation, which is the feeling that there's a problem. And that feeling that there's a problem is the problem.
Okay.
Okay? And you can't make that go away by prettying up the mind and the thoughts and the way you think about things and so forth. You follow
Mm-hmm.
that? Okay.
I'll believe you a little bit about that. Maybe that maybe I've changed some because we stopped for pizza on the way here, and I just started talking to the woman at the table next to me, and she goes, "Talking to you is like it's so enlightening. You're just." You're just so calm.
Case closed.
But it's good to be able to expose my internal experience to myself, instead of.
It's very useful, and that's the two things that my work do is, first of all, somehow find a way to wrestle people into the initial looking, and then over time to provide support and encouragement from my own experience, not from theory. That I don't know whether whether it matters, right? I didn't.
But it
have
seems like you were looking constantly.
Oh, that was because I was crazy constantly. Really, it was because the melodrama that I created around my spiritual enlightenment and the departure of my spiritual enlightenment, because of the fact that I was in prison. Never discount that. Because of the fact that I was in prison, had nothing whatsoever to distract me. I was not even allowed to work like the rest of the prisoners were. It's natural that for me, I would be obsessed with whatever is happening in my head. I mean, really, literally obsessed. And I was. And that's why. I was just crazy. And I got to the point where I settled on one thing. Ramana. I settled on, the reason why is beside the point, it's just another story. But I settled on this one thing to find out what Ramana wanted us to do and do it. And I had such a singularity of purpose that came from the fact that there wasn't much to distract me in the environment. There was nothing but my own thoughts to distract me. And my personality is kind of, that way anyway. So I got real dramatic about it. And I really was intense and driven and focused and wanted to do nothing else and tried and tried and tried and did the stupidest things that could be imagined. And no matter how stupid I was and how obsessive and stupid I was in enacting it, it worked. Fear is gone. I am absolutely the same as this life.
My other question is, 2 months ago, and I'm sure it's not correct to say it this way, but it was working more. I was able to, it was just easier to look at myself when I was doing it. And the sense was like, or my question to myself was more, what's right now? Didn't really have words, but say it was more focused on, instead of, am I here? It was just really clear that any thought or anything had already gone. Or, and some thoughts were going to come or something, but the only thing was right now. But I don't
see. That's different. That's not what I asked.
Right, I know. That's why I stopped doing it.
Right. That's a displacement, and of course, that kind of practice will produce those kind of results. It's absolutely the case. If the kind of practice of
what kind of results?
The results of
being able to see myself easier.
No, clarity and calmness and deep interest in what's happening and things of that nature. But it's not what I talk about.
Right.
It's a movement in a different direction. Doesn't mean that the work wasn't going on. It just means that that's something that appeared. It stayed for a while, and then it went. And as always, you
said. I think somebody asked, "Well, what about right now?" And someone on a worldwide thing, and you were like, "That's not it." So I just stopped doing it.
Well, that's good. I'm very happy that you pay so much attention to it.
Okay. Just wanted to double check.
Anything that moves the object of your interest out here, in the now, and the only reason I use here as a
But it was like I'm now.
well, you are now,
Uh-huh.
but not in the same way that you're here.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, yeah, that's good to.
You know, there's a guy, but you ever hear Wei Wu Wei?
Yeah, but I don't remember what it is.
Well, actually, Wei Wu Wei is an old Chan Buddhist concept, action, non-action. But Wei Wu Wei was the name of this big red-headed Irish guy who became a Chan Buddhist and wrote these. Well, I hate to bring this up, but I would hate for you to go out and buy this book and get taken by it. But he wrote these books of really distilled aphorisms, statements about things, and more of the same, more of what you are. This is what you are. This is what you're not. This is what you should be, and so forth. But in a really precise and surgical way. And he said once, I read this and I was taken by it. He said, insofar as you are anything at all, you are time. Now, I'm not even going to try to explicate that because the experience is one that either you get some sense of what it is that he's pointing to or you don't, and in neither case is it of any importance, except in this case. This creature, this organism, with the entire persona, the whole way in which it unfolds and moves and has its being within you, this creature is time. And now is an aspect of time. It's a way of looking at time. It's a way of removing yourself from time. But it all is clustered around this timeliness of you. And it's not about you. It's like looking at yourself, or looking at awareness, or looking at consciousness, or any of that. Looking at now, even when you're looking at it, I am now, is looking at, well, what I just said. Nothing wrong with it. Can't hurt you. Can't help you.
It's looking at something, but not looking at yourself.
Right. And
You.
which is why the most naked, the most nakedly that I can suggest what it is I want you to look at is you. Right? And I sometimes point out the fact that one thing you are absolutely certain of, the one thing that you know, like you know nothing else, nothing, is in the same category as the fact that you know that you are here. You know that. You don't know that you're now. That's a different kind of thing. But you know that you are here. You know that you exist. And you know that in a way that you know nothing else. Nothing else even comes close to the certainty that you have that you are here. And I suggest to people that they look to see if they can see what that knowing, what the cause of that knowing is, which is you. Because you are here. Because you are never absent.
Thanks.
Okay? Helpful?
Yeah.
Good. What happened here? No, it's something I ate probably. Every once in a while I'll eat something that does this to me. I don't know what it is. Some kind of stupid food allergy. Anybody else want to talk before? I saw you first. I don't know who. Sand was up first. You're next. Yeah, you. Of course, I don't remember your name, although I know you well.
Yeah, John.
John. See what I mean? Hello, John.
I'm certain that I won't be able to phrase the question.
It's okay.
Hopefully there will be something that communicates here.
We'll do our best.
That little flashing out of wherever that comes from, of seeing self, has happened.
Uh-huh.
And it's everything it's purported to be. For that flashing moment that here I am.
That's
Undeniably here.
undeniably here, undeniably this life, not separate from anything.
But here's the rub. Here's the rub. There's you. What am I to make of you? You. How
Well,
do I?
I tell you from my heart that my experience of me is the same as your experience of you. It's not like a copy. We are the same. We are the same I.
Do you have a sense of urgency to express that to you, to me?
No, not so much. I'm willing to speak about it, but it's at the heart of the matter is that looking. That looking brings everything. And you will see for yourself, and you may see differently than I do. But I guarantee you one thing, you will see clearly that, like you might be out in the world and see somebody that looks, like conflicted or causelessly happy or, something like that, right? Something that's inexplicable. Like somebody's not very happy and walking around and so forth. Their countenance is like that. And if you just stop for a second and wonder, what does that feel like? What does it feel like to be him or her without regard to the countenance, without regard to the demeanor? It will come to you without any possibility of dispute that it is just you. Same. I don't know how to explain it. There's no way you can evoke it, but it will happen. And it's that, of course, that gives rise to, in individual life, true compassion. True compassion being the recognition that we are one creature, that the misery and suffering of one is the misery and suffering of all. And you'll see. Now the Buddhists, seeing the fundamental and profound character of compassion, how profound and fundamental and primal it is. It's not what we think it is. It's not like sympathy or, caring what happens to you, or like I care about you, I hope you do well. It's not like that at all. It's like a sharing of the misery. It's like a acute awareness of the presence of misery in the human creature. And I don't remember why I started saying that, but you'll see.
I guess in light of what you've been speaking about today, I guess what I started wondering about is if my inability to know what to do with you, not personally you, but
I know what you mean.
is just another aspect of avoidance of this unsatisfactoriness of my life.
Well, it is. You know, pretty much everything. And I have no idea how long things take because I've had reports of it, this proceeding rather rapidly, and I've had reports, and the reports of it not proceeding rather rapidly get more attention, right? Because when it proceeds rapidly, like people just are happy, you know? It's not like there's some big drama around it. They're just happy and content. But it takes time. These patterns, these traits, these behavioral habits take time before they go. They came called by your desire to be distracted from the misery of your life. And they have been, by their own lights or by the simple repetitious nature of them, they have come to be seen as useful, or they have come to be used over this time. And as the need for them goes away, they will go away. And first of all, in my experience, it's not so much that they go away, but they're just not very interesting after a while. They're just things that have come and they're going to go. And after a time, they just don't show up. But until that time, just as it has always been the case that none of that says anything about you that's authentic. None of it. The presence of these phenomenal arisings say nothing about you that's authentic. And they still say nothing about you that's authentic. They're just the parade of phenomena. They're nothing that that you need concern yourself about. They come and they go. The deep-seated desire that comes mostly from indoctrination into spiritual principles and spiritual understandings and so forth, that says I am not finished until I don't have this and I don't have that, and I see everything as this way rather than that way. That's all more of the same. Just more stuff that we have done, trying to protect ourselves from ourselves. You need not concern yourself about it. The end is sure. The end is certain.
It seems as though when because there is a desire. There is a desire to share.
Yeah.
And my experience of that is, I'm just pissing people off.
Well,
and I don't understand. It is hard to hear because it's taken me 3 years and I'm just barely starting to understand. Mm-hmm. But I don't remember being pissed off about it. I must be doing something wrong.
Maybe you're doing something right. I mean, I don't know how you could make that determination. I don't think you're doing, like, for example, the fact that you report this difficulty with me, like, what do I do with you, or you, that doesn't mean to me that I have failed. Quite to the contrary. It's a further confirmation of the authenticity of what I'm suggesting here. The fact that you notice that is a further confirmation of that. The fact that you're not identified with that is a further confirmation of that. I have had people get really pissed off at me, and, well, but I tell you something. It's also true that the desire to share, although it arises from the dawning of authentic compassion. And compassion, means to suffer with. It doesn't mean, oh, I love you so much, I just want you to be happy. It means that your suffering is my suffering, that your misery is my misery, and that I wanted to stop. So sometimes this desire to share is another arising of the same stuff that's been going on all along. It's nothing you need to worry about. Nothing you can do about. But it sometimes is the case. For me, my experience in this desire to share business was that, man, the last thing in the world I want to do is share anything. Really. The idea, and partly this was because of the fact that I had seen so clearly through without having a rational understanding of what had happened. That comes later. I had seen so clearly through the uselessness of spiritual discourse in the way that we've been doing it, that I wanted no part of it. I really did not want to be another wandering Advaita Vedanta non-dual teacher. It's the last thing I wanted to do, really. And Carla and I tried for years to not have this happen while it was going on and happening anyway. We started a translation business. Carla's an extremely brilliant and talented translator who has professional experience in translation. Started a translation business. Nothing came of that. We started a web design business right at the end of the dot-com boom, the bubble. Nothing came of that. Of course, I am too old and have too difficult a history to get an ordinary job anywhere. And it actually came to the point where we were doing this, we were traveling around and talking to people, even though I really didn't think I was doing anything useful and I really didn't want to do it, but we were doing it. And we were making a living at it. I mean, really, that's what it was. And we had no way that we could see to get out of it. So we decided, instead of getting out of it, to get good at it and to be really helpful to people rather than just, yada, 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 all is one, consciousness, and all that. So my advice mostly to people in this regard, if they ask me for advice, is to wait.
What?
Wait. You can't stop this desire from arising. You really can't stop the fact that you are doing it and talking to people about it. But be aware of the fact that this is not necessarily, this is an old thing. It doesn't mean it's not going to be used to enormously good effect, but it's an old thing, and it's not yet ripe. Just be aware of that. You can't stop it. You can't make it go away. You can't stop yourself from talking. But just, notice that as it arises. And go back to the point, which is you. Always you. You follow that? Okay. Do we have time for one more? Okay. Hi.
Hey, John.
Do I know your name?
Thomas.
Gomez.
Thomas. Like Thomas, but Thomas.
Thomas. Oh,
Thomas.
Thomas. I don't think I've known your
It's
name
a Belgian expression.
Uh-huh.
A Belgian way of saying it.
before. Okay. Thomas. Are you Belgian?
Yes.
Cool.
My question, John, is in regards to what I am looking for. And yesterday you spoke about getting a fresh start, leaving behind these spiritual concepts. And I've heard you say in the past, you're not looking for awareness, you're not looking for stillness, etc., etc. And yet my personal intuition, my feeling about it is, no, that's exactly what I'm looking for. And so I've had this struggle. Like, what is this? Is there a conflict here? And as I was listening to you yesterday, I had this insight which I want to check out with you. And basically, what I came up with is that stillness, awareness, etc., could be original reports of looking for
That's
yourself.
right. That's it.
But alienate yourself because they are not an unmediated experience of yourself.
Of you. That's right. That's exactly right. That's a very useful insight to have arisen. And it is the nature of all the spiritual teachings is that insight, that insight that, oh, I am stillness. Oh, what I am is awareness. Oh, what I am is love. Oh, what I am is this. And then elaboration on that understanding to transmit to you and I what the speaker is trying to say to be helpful, and which just turns out to be not helpful, because what's being described is what we then try to become, which is what we've been doing all along. Looking for something to be, looking for what's right, what's wrong. Yes, that's exactly the case.
Good. And then a follow-up question on that is, as I've been listening to you over the years, you tell us, look at yourself. You've even said sometimes you could use the word hear instead of look. Well, anytime when somebody...
Listen, actually.
Or listen, yeah. Anytime when somebody tells me to look, I'm expecting to see.
Yes.
Anytime when somebody's telling me listen, I'm expecting to hear.
Right. You see how automatic that is, right?
Right.
Here.
Yet, what you're talking about is that which is unknowable. Yet here. So my question is, when I'm looking, I'm actually not looking to see, am I?
No, you're not. There almost always is some very subtle sense of me that you can't call it by any other name, but it has no characteristics. But you're really not seeing anything. That's not the point. They're absolutely right. The point of looking is not to see something. And of course, that's what we absolutely think is the case. If I tell you to look, I'm asking you to see it and to make your seeing of it permanent. But your awareness of it already is permanent. The looking is to make the effort to notice what you want. Notice this reality of you. Just for a second. I mean, really. So brief a duration that you may not even notice it happens.
So, John, would it be correct to say that the reason why you're looking, as you're saying, is not to see, but would it be then to turn the arrow of your attention to what you are?
That's it. That's entirely what I'm saying. Because the arrow of your attention is precisely that underlying urge to find a solution. To find a solution to an immediate problem, which itself is part of the overall solution to the often denied underlying problem of the unsatisfactoriness of being a human being. And yes, that's exactly the case. What you're doing is you're taking that misdirected energy that seeks that urge to find a solution, to find a way out, or just to find something to distract yourself with. You're taking that and moving it in the direction that, the only direction that actually can have an effect.
So one more question. It's basically, if I understand you correct, it's the outward attention. We kind of need that to have a launching base.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Because without it,
that's right.
we could not do it. But we really don't want it because it's because of our suffering, we think.
Yes, right. Exactly.
But actually, without it, we would not be able to see.
That's right.
Because we would be only seeing.
That's right.
We wouldn't see.
That's right. And when the misery ends, when this discontent vanishes, by whatever name we call it, then there is no search going on. I mean, it just vanishes. It's not like there's some big event that occurs. It just vanishes. It just doesn't happen anymore. And that's why that this thing with Papaji is an excellent example of what I speak of when I speak about people who authentically have discovered their actual natural state, authentically have discovered their actual fearlessness but really don't know precisely how that came about. But what they do know is that the search is ended. So Papaji says, to be happy, call off the search. And we try to call off the search, using, of course, the same energy as everything else to try to make it stop happening. And of course, it doesn't stop happening. It doesn't. It just continues because it is what it is. So, but you see that that's what I am suggesting to be the case in pretty much universally in the spiritual teachings. What we have received is descriptions, heartfelt, authentic, and profoundly motivated by compassion, descriptions of what it feels like to be free. And then it's suggested to us that we engage in something that will produce that way of living in ourselves. And it's not like the people who do this, have done this, are bad people, or they're not enlightened, or they're anything at all. It's just we are limited by the capacity of these human creatures to actually get a sense of what it is that is actually happening. It's like last night when I talked about the incredible persistence of the unexamined assumption that the earth is at the center of the universe. It's the same in the spiritual realm. There is incredibly tenacious and persistent unexamined assumption that what we are seeking is a transformation of our lives, a transformation of the way we think about things and so forth. And the fact that that has been unexamined for so long doesn't mean that people have been misleading us deliberately, or that they should be thrown away or discarded or demonized. It just means that that's the human condition. We rest on unexamined assumptions and don't notice that we're doing so. I mean, it's obvious, right? That what needs to happen is your life has to change. That's obvious. Just like it's obvious that the earth is at the center of the universe. I mean, that doesn't take any thinking about. That's obvious. So yes, I agree. Yes, that's the case.
I want to just share a very small little experience that I had, which was about a year ago. My kids got some kitties, and I never had a love for cats. I mean, it was just like, okay, let's have them. It's fun. And as I was trying to look at myself, you know how cats can stare you in the eyes and kind of be looking. And
I do indeed.
and there was this one point where I looked at the cat and this is me. And I think it was because I didn't quite like him. There was something alien about him.
Yes, right. That's when it really gets you and it really hits you.
Right,
Yeah.
because obviously it would be the same with another human being.
Yeah,
We're
that's
constantly
right.
in contact with other human beings and we don't see that same
That's right.
difference. And since then I like cats. I'm just
Okay.
Thanks, John.
It's a pleasure talking to you, Tomas.
Good.
Okay, we're done here for the morning. This has been a very nice meeting. I'm very happy with the time we spent together here. Happy with our conversations. I'll be back at 3 o'clock. And in the meantime, you're free to do whatever you damn well want to. But I suggest that while you're doing it, you take a second every once in a while to see if you can't get just a taste of what it is to be you. Not to be self, not to be awareness, not to be stillness, but what it is to be you. The you-ness of you. And we'll be back at 3 o'clock. I think, Carly, you have something, no? Well, just give me a chance to get unhooked here and out the door and enjoy your lunch. Looks like a beautiful day.